NBA draft is 2 weeks away, which means a lot of our drafts in Dynasty basketball are maybe about a day over 2 weeks away, because a lot of us like to draft right away. So what we're going to do today is we are going to do a simulated Dynasty mock draft through the first 15 picks of this draft. Welcome to the Angle Fantasy Basketball Podcast. I am your host, Andrew. Before we get started, let's bring in our other two guests here. So first off, my partner in crime for all of the rookie content that we do here at Angle, Mitchell. How are you today, dude?
Pretty good. Just got back from work in LA. It's crazy out there right now, staying safe, but it's even crazier, the pre-draft process. So very excited.
Exactly. Very, very busy month for us indeed. And what we talked about on a different podcast of the guest we're about to bring in is that evaluating the big board for this year is a lot harder than it usually has been. And it's because a lot of these guys, like, past four, and like towards like the back end of the lottery feel almost equal to each other in ways. And so it's really hard, it starts to become users' preference at that point. But this exact crew of people did a rookie podcast all the way back in November. So it's really fun for us three to get back together again to talk rookies again. And so let's bring in our third member of the group, Noah Rubin. How are you today, sir? Great to have you back.
Andrew, Mitch, I appreciate you guys having me back on the show. And yeah, you mentioned the show that we did. I don't even remember when we did that, but I'm hoping to get in our rookie mock a few of the players that I actually talked about during that episode. So we'll see if you guys are able to snipe me and take some of the guys that I'm targeting now that you can, if you guys remember that episode well. We'll see.
Yeah, here we go. So the way that this will work is something such as sniping will be possible. So we're going to draft 15 players. So for us three, it is 5 each. We are purely doing this based off of who we would take in a dynasty setting. So we are not considering at all what the real life NBA team would do with their pick, because we are going to be using a mock draft simulator known as Fanspo. So it'll go in the same order of the NBA draft and you'll see all the teams there, but that's not what we're looking at today. We're looking at what we would do in dynasty when placed on the clock with that specific pick. So we've already determined our order. We're going to do a snake draft. I'm going to go first. Noah's going to go second, and Mitchell will go third. He has the tough task of taking on both picks 3 and 4, which is not very easy to do this year. So let's go ahead and get started. Hey guys, just a reminder, we have officially launched our Patreon. So all of the free content that we already put out, that's going to stay the same. The amount of free content we put out is, of course, going to stay the same. But what the Patreon is additional content that our patrons will only have access to, as they will also get access to more Dynasty rank updates per year. So we currently have a updated Dynasty ranks within our Patreon. It has 14 rookies included. We also have more detailed rookie scouting reports in our Patreon, as well as a podcast Mitch and I did talking about each of the rookies' placements within the Dynasty rank in this recent update. So if you want to check that out, we will leave the link in the description down below. Your support is greatly appreciated. So here we are. This is a good website, Fanspo. If you ever wanted to do just a fun, mock draft simulator like this, it shows a lot of good details, such as what the current roster is like, and then we have the big board here too. So with the first overall pick, if I was ever given the first overall pick in a dynasty draft, I am going to be taking Cooper Flagg, one of the best freshman seasons we have seen through the NCAA in a very, very long time, probably since like an Anthony Davis. This is one of the better freshman seasons we have seen, maybe even like a Zion level, because AD won the national championship and Zion did not. So maybe more compared to that. But Cooper Flagg is somebody that even Mitch has been telling me about since Cooper was about like 15 or 16. That's how long he's been in the NBA draft spotlight before. So don't make any other type of consideration here of who you're going to take. It has to be Cooper Flagg, number 1 overall. Not only because of the sheer level of talent, but because you have so much insane flexibility of what you could possibly do with him in a trade. You can use him. You can attach other prospects to him to trade upwards to one of the four, core 4 guys like a Wembanyama, a Jokic, a Shea. You can use him to trade for another established star plus depth. Like maybe you want to get Tyrese Halliburton plus some extra pieces. Cooper Flagg, especially in this early draft process before he's on the floor, even in Summer League, is holding so much high value within Dynasty leagues. So you have to take him number one, not just to be a contributor for you, but as really the ultimate trade asset to use right now. So Noah, now let's go to you. You are picking second overall in a Dynasty rookie draft. Who are you taking?
Well, you sniped me on my guy because I was hoping the Cooper flag was going to fall to me, but apparently that's not going to happen. So I'm going to take the guy who's the consensus number two pick, both in real life and in dynasty leagues as well, and that's Dylan Harper, who is a guy that probably would go number one in most drafts. There's just a generational talent in this one, so he's going to go number two. But a nice consolation prize for both the Spurs and for dynasty managers that are going to get him at the number two spot. He can do a number of different things offensively. He's a strong passer, got to the rim at a really high rate, got to the free throw line at a high rate, was an okay shooter from the free throw line as well, but is a guy that's going to be a crafty scorer and crafty facilitator for San Antonio, or if something else happens where he ends up elsewhere. But no matter where he is, like he's going to be a really strong player. He's a 6'6" point guard. He also had an okay steal rate in college as well. So he's going to do a number of different things in category leagues. But he's a player that has all NBA upside. He's a player that is going to be a perennial all-star, I think, if he hits his high-end outcomes. So, uh, yeah, there's not a ton of weaknesses to his game in both real life and in fantasy basketball. So he's the player that should be going number two in every rookie draft. I don't know exactly how he'd go in a dynasty startup. I forgot where he went in Matt Lawson and I's dynasty startup, but the consensus number two pick here. I don't have the hard job. Mitch is the one with the hard job here. So this one too is how your every rookie draft you're in should go.
Exactly. It should go one and two like this. Do not be deterred at all by Dylan Harper with, potential Kevin Durant to the Spurs rumors. Like, we're not worried about that right now. We're not worried about the fact that there's some other scorers already present within the San Antonio system. Dylan Harper is going to get his. All right, Mitchell. Now you have the tall task of dealing with number three and number four back to back. So there's lots of ways people can go here because one and two is a sure thing. And now we're getting into the mystery zone. So you're on the board for two picks, sir. Who are you going with at number three overall in a dynasty rookie draft?
Right. So right now there's really three or so selections that I think majority of fantasy managers are going to take. Um, One being VJ Edgecombe. So that's who I'm going to take at third. And even if I didn't have back-to-back picks, I can in this exercise technically take Ace and then still have VJ. But in this specific scenario, I'm taking VJ as my bona fide number third pick. A little bit about him. He played for the Bahamas national team in the Olympic qualifiers. He was dunking on everybody. And when you think of VJ Edgecombe, one thing that you really take away is his athleticism. I wouldn't say 99th percentile athlete, but he's very close. Think of more like a Soar than like a Men Thompson type. He's very, very exciting in terms of watchability. And that's kind of like a hidden thing from fantasy managers. You like to draft players that you are excited to watch and not only produce, great fantasy output. And VJ Edgecombe does both of these things very well. And when I look to compare him to a high-end outcome, I think of like a Victor Oladipo, someone who can potentially get you in that 20 point per game mark, 5 or 6 rebounds, and like 4 to 5 assists per game with an insane steal rate. And that's exactly what VJ Edgecombe can provide you. So I'm going to take VJ here at three.
All right. Now, sir, you are on the board with the number four overall pick in a dynasty rookie draft. Who are you going for?
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting because technically I don't love Ace Bailey as a prospect because there are so many question marks, whether it's his mentality, his shot selection, his handle, it's a bit loose. But when you think of a rookie draft, you not only have to think of upside, but tradability. Someone in your league is going to be excited for a 6'9", 6'10" athletic wing who could do it on both ends of the floor. And that's exactly what Ace Bailey is, besides, his obvious concerns in his shot selection and efficiency. I'm taking Ace Bailey because of the asset that he is right now on draft day. He's a great scorer. He has a great rebounding rate. He has a high motor. He provides pretty good steal rates and some out of position blocks as well. The IQ is what really is a question for me because for every Anthony Edwards, there is a Jonathan Kuminga. More likely or not, you're going to be on the ladder. And that's why I'm a little bit concerned with Bailey, but just because as an asset, I have to take him here at 4 just because of what he can become and what I can potentially get in a return for him as well.
All right, very good. And what he means by comparing an Anthony Edwards to John Kuminga, they're not necessarily the same player, but it's, those players who didn't interview well at the combine, maybe had questions about their basketball IQ, and it's kind of more of like a controversial type of prospect. That's more what he meant by that. Not saying that Edwards and Kuminga play the same position. But now let's go to you, Noah. You're on the clock. Who are you taking number 5 overall in a dynasty draft with what seemingly is a lot of people's top 4 is now off the board? So things are getting real interesting here. Who are you going with?
Yeah, I think the player that I'm going to take is a guy that, depending on where he does land, there's going to be a conversation to have him number 3 overall in a rookie draft, and that's Colin Murray Boyles, who, if you just look at the numbers, is one of the best fantasy prospects in this class. The defense is obviously what stands out. Strong steal rate, strong block rate, strong in the glass. All those stats were very encouraging. Then obviously there's the downside of, can he develop a shot? Because how does he fit in the NBA if he's not able to hit open threes at a decent rate? Does he get played off the floor? Because yeah, I mean, he's really impactful defensively, but he's basically a liability on offense. How does his offensive game develop? I think there's definitely a lot of upside for that to happen, to where he is like at least an okay shooter, someone that can knock down an open shot and is a decent passer. I know that he gets the Draymond Green comparisons, which is probably entirely unfair to basically say, hey, yeah, we like this guy. We're going to compare him to a future Hall of Famer, one of the greatest and smartest defenders of all time. Like, this is who he is. And it's like, okay, like maybe he doesn't hit that high end outcome, but that play style of a guy who can maybe be an offensive hub. And if he gets on, this is what I meant with situation. If he gets on a team where they can use him as a passer or a screener, and there's enough offensive creators on that team to figure things out and make up for any offensive limitations he has so that he can thrive defensively. And he is undersized, but he's got a 7-foot wingspan and he's a solidly built player. So yeah, I think he's going to be effective on defense, and statistically he's going to be effective, which is what we obviously love in fantasy basketball, is a guy that can get stocks, that can get rebounds, that can pass at a decent rate. He's going to contribute in a number of different categories, which is why I think he's going to be in the conversation to be a top 5 player and potentially even a top 3 guy in dynasty rookie drafts, depending on where he ends up landing.
All right. So you made things a bit spicy here for me, because now I'm back to back at 6 and 7. And I thought I probably would get maybe one of who's here on the board in Queen or Jocko Jonas, and then would have to decide between the other 2 guys who I do like a lot in Trey Johnson and Con Kneppel. Okay, so for number 6, oh, this is tough. This is tough. For number 6 overall in a dynasty draft, I'm going to go first with Kasparis Jonas. I am aware that there is issues with turnovers. I think he will be a bit more protected in an NBA offense, especially if he goes somewhere that already has another creator present. Like, I don't think we necessarily want to hope that he's going to immediately be thrust into a primary creator role. I think if he, for example, I don't think Charlotte would take him at 4, but let's say they did, and he's on the same team as LaMelo Ball. That's what you want. Like, you want him to be more of the secondary creator as opposed to primary, at least during this time where he transitions into the NBA and figures things out more. So what makes him different from like a Yegor Demon is he has that shooting to fall back on. He's not an insane athlete, but he at least has reliable shooting to fall back on. In addition to that, you always love these jumbo point guards if we're talking talking for 9 category fantasy basketball because they are, due to their size, able to rip down a pretty fair amount of rebounds. So just those out of position rebounds, like 5.7 rebounds a game for him in college, that's solid. So for a 6'6" point guard, this is something where, I could see him going as early as 4. And I can also see people having a bit of an issue with him overall. So I like him. I think that debate starts for me at 4 between like him or an Ace Bailey, because he at least represents a fairly safe floor within that range. Even though there is still a couple of question marks on the overall upside of Kasparis, but I've liked him for a while. So I'm going to kind of stick with my initial gut feel on him and go with Kasparis. Now, speaking of gut feel, my gut's been telling me something a little bit different lately. And first off, I do not think that Derek Queen is going to be Şengün or Sabonis. I think we kind of need to cool off on that type of comparison. There is still great players you can compare him to. Players that had a very, very useful 9 category output. Like, maybe 90th percentile outcome is like a Zach Randolph. Someone who had a great NBA career, 20-point per game scorer, and he has those out of position assists too for a forward. Maybe even almost like a Julius Randle type too. Other comparisons I've seen is if the scoring doesn't really come to fruition, he could be like a Boris Diaw in his prime, maybe even like a Kelly Olynyk. So like expecting that 6+ assists per game upside, which is what he needs to reach a Şengün or Sabonis level, is I think a bit above where he's at. And there is some questions I'm starting to have about him the more and more that I research him. I liked him a lot when this season first started, and more questions started to come up. But even though I am starting to like Trey Johnson more and more, I think just with the overall upside swing here, since I went kind of on a safer route with Kasparis, I'm going to take Queen here at number 7 overall, just purely due to that overall upside that he can figure it out. I might strongly regret not getting Trey Johnson, but for this exercise, we'll start off with Queen and get the big man out of the way early. So now, Noah, we are back to you. Who are you taking number 8 overall in a Dynasty rookie draft?
Yeah, I think I'm going to leave Trey Johnson on the board for you there. I'm not going to take him. So we'll see if Mitch ends up taking him from you, or if we're able to get him when things come back around to you. I'm going to stick with and actually get one of the guys that I mentioned that we talked about when we did the podcast months ago, and that's Kevin Malawak. 7'2" center, nice wingspan, did a number of things really effectively at Duke, strongly built. The shooting touch, I think, is a nice question mark. Like, can he be a floor spacer? Do you want him to be a floor spacer? I think, to me, I'm like, can we at least get to the point where he's hitting open threes and teams are saying, hey, we need to close out. We need to consider that when we're playing defense. We can't just let this guy knock down open shots. Now, I don't think that's necessarily what you really want his game to be, is relying on outside shots, because he's 7'2", built well, and shoots an insanely high percentage at the rim. So I think that's where he's going to make his money in the traditional center skill set. But can he be a little bit more dynamic than just rebounds, blocks, high field goal percentage? Can he be a little bit better than that? The free throw percentage was encouraging there. 76.6% isn't terrible. So maybe, and the shooting touch I think we saw was okay. So maybe we do see him develop into that. But even if we don't, he's going to be better in fantasy basketball, bare minimum, than in necessarily the low end outcome in real life, because he's really effective on the glass. He was one of the best offensive rebounders in college basketball last season, and obviously a really, really good shot blocker as well. I think landing spot will be key here. Can he land with a team that has a good facilitator that can feed him lobs, feed him easy layups at the rim, easy dunks? And that would probably maximize him. And there's also a chance that he goes to a team that doesn't have that on the roster right now, but maybe they're able to add it via trade, via free agency, or via the draft next season. If it is a team, I know that this doesn't matter for this, but with the 8th pick here, it would be Brooklyn taking him. Like, if he does go to a team like a Brooklyn, no, they probably don't have that high upside point guard that can get 7 or 8 assists per game, but maybe they get that later in this draft. Maybe they get it with Nolan Traore at 19, and or somewhere down the line. So eventually getting into that situation, I think, will maximize him. But there's a lot of things to like about him as a prospect.
All right, Mitchell, we are back to you for a round of back-to-back picks. Number 9 overall, who are you taking in a Dynasty rookie draft?
Uh, Man, this one is tough because I really didn't expect Trey Johnson to fall this far.
And
I
this is why the
mean,
exercise is useful because this will happen to you in your dynasty league. You'll be zeroed in on one guy, and then someone will fall to you, and you have to make that decision. So, sorry, but go ahead. Go ahead.
right, right. Exactly. No, you make a great point. And I think at this point of the draft, you're not really going to find the same level of scorer as a Trey Johnson, someone who can put 20 points per game on, almost 40% shooting from three, who's also 80% from the free throw line. So the shooting seems to translate a little bit better than, let's say, a Benedict Mathurin, a previous, top six or so pick, similar to where Trey is being mocked. So the shooting translation seems to be a little bit more secure than a Mathurin, which tends to leave me to believe that he could stay on the floor in a playoff setting. But also, he does have some hidden playmaking that we really didn't see in fruition at Texas because they had a traditional point guard, and Trey Johnson was more of that kind of give me a bucket type of guy. They'll feed him. We didn't really see him as the offensive engine that he can become. So if he can become that offensive engine, I'm thinking more like on the lines of like a Tyler Hero type stat set where he could maybe get you 23 points per game, 5 rebounds, and maybe 4 assists. That's pretty exciting on elite three-point shooting and great free throw percentage. So I think at what am I here? Nine. At nine, you're not going to find another high potential scorer than a Trey Johnson. So I'm going to take him here with my first pick back to back.
All right. So now you are on the board for number 10 overall in a rookie draft. Who are you taking?
Oh, this is tough because I really love Colin. I'm intrigued by Igor. But if you scroll down a bit, there's this French prospect that I really like, who's very toolsy.
Here
Where
he
is
is.
he? Noah, wow, at 22. Okay, so here I'm going to take Noah Esenge, here at 10, just because of what he can become. He's a very tall and lengthy guy. He has good physical measurements. He has the theoretical potential to guard 2 through 4, maybe 5 if he bulks up. He has that nice connective ability, similar to like a Pascal Siakam coming out of New Mexico. He also has great play finishing and a great free throw rate. So a free throw rate is a sneaky indicator, if you have a high one, towards potential high offensive option, running the offense per se. And with Noah, you don't even need to call a play for him. He's gonna fill the passing lanes in the fast break. He's gonna get that offensive rebound and put it back strong. He's gonna get fouled, and he embraces contact, which is something that I love from not only a mentality standpoint, but also from a fantasy production standpoint as well. He's gonna be able to produce stats without being the focal point of the offense. And if he's able to potentially develop his on-ball skills where he can be that focal point, man, you're looking at like a Pascal Siakam. But if even if he doesn't, I see similar translatability to like a Jaden McDaniels, like a high-level defensive option that provides other peripheral stats as well, and maybe even a Nick Batum. So these are some pretty safe outcomes here, but also has that high outcome as a potential all-star. So yeah, here I'm going to take Noah, which might seem like a little bit of reach, but with due time, I think it'll pay out.
So speaking of Noah's, Noah, you are back on the board. Number 11 overall in a dynasty rookie draft. Who do you want here?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a guy that I'm incredibly high on. I was considering taking with my last pick, and I would probably consider taking much earlier than this. So I'm pretty happy that he slid to me at 11, and I'm sure by the time actual rookie drafts come around, people will know that I want him, and I'll have to take him much earlier. But that's Jeremiah Fears from Oklahoma, and I know that there's a lot of question marks about him. There's definitely reasons to be scared off by him, such as a terrible percentage at the rim. He did not finish well. It was 53% at the rim, really bad. The 3-point percentage was low. He was not the most efficient guard, but we got to think about the context. He was playing in the SEC, which is one of the toughest conferences in college basketball last season. He was supposed to be graduating from high school recently. He reclassed to be able to go to college a year earlier, go to the draft a year earlier. A little bit of an undersized guard, but really nice vertical there. But there's a lot of things to be encouraged by as well. He got to the rim at a really high percentage. He got to the free throw line, or excuse me, at a really high rate. He got to the free throw line at a really high rate, knocked down free throws really well. Uh, Passed it pretty well. 28.6 assist percentage was 11th, I believe, in this class. Uh, Only a couple of prospects that'll be going in the first round, like a Nolan Triore, maybe Cam Jones. I don't know if he's definitely a first round guy. Jaeger Damon and Ben Seraph are guys that had a better assist percentage, but one of the better passers in this draft class. And was a really high usage player, was the focal point of the offense, the focal point of defensive game plans. And he had a lot of success. I mean, the counting stats, 17.1 points, 4.1 rebounds, 4.1 assists, like that's pretty good for an 18-year-old playing in a tough conference. So I really, really do like his upside here. I think it's going to be a process. I don't think from day one Jeremiah Fears is going to come out and be a fantasy stud, but I think he's a player that, and that's probably the case for a lot of point guards that are going to come in and they're going to struggle early on. It takes time to learn to play point guard in the NBA, especially if you're not that big, a little bit undersized. So I think it is a process. I'd love to see him go to a situation that doesn't have like a really strong point guard option so he can just work through mistakes and grow and just continue to play basketball against really competitive teams and really competitive point guards. And I think that'll help him grow. And I'm really excited for him long term to see what he can be.
Very nice. Very nice. I had a feeling you might go Fierce because I know we talked about him on the
Okay.
pod you and I did together about a month or two ago. Okay.
Gotcha.
So now let's move on to number 12 overall. And you know that giddy feeling you get when someone you really wanted falls to you. So with my picks at 6 and 7, Jockey Shonis and Queen, both of those picks represent some inherent risk. Yes, I did get Cooper 1, but the two guys in the middle there, pretty risky. So let's go with the least risky guy, in my opinion, in the mid to late lottery, Con Kneppel. I see really almost no world where this guy as a lottery pick fails. At the minimum, he's going to be a 7th or 8th player in a rotation. At the absolute minimum, that's what I think his floor should be. But there's the upside there to be a possibly even secondary creator like a Desmond Bain. So he is something Mitch alluded to in our pod on Noah's pod, that he is probably the reason why Kaman Malawach had such a big resurgence late in the season. It's because they were running a pick and roll game together, Con Kneppel as the ball handler. So he was really emerging as the second best player on Duke. He was the second leading scorer on Duke. And a lot of times when we get these guys who are like, oh man, he shoots 40% from three, that's awesome. So many times those guys are like a Jace Richardson. They're 6'3", 185 on their best day. And that's not the case here with Con. He's like 6'5", 6'6", and weighs over 200 pounds. So he has the body of like a downhill athlete, but he has the elite shooting touch. Just barely missed the 50, 40, 90 club, but 40% from three, 91% from the line. As Mitch alluded to earlier, that, free throw percentage is that sneaky indicator of future potential NBA shooting success. So being over 90% is absolutely wild. So I love him. He's a serial winner, Wisconsin State champion, went pretty far into March Madness with Duke. He makes those winning plays. He's a hustle player, smart player. So this is just, one of the least riskiest guys I could possibly go with here. And that is for number 12 overall. But now let's go to number 13. So I feel as though I got a sure thing in Cooper Flagg. And then, of course, I got a very rock solid guy in Con. So now there's the debate on if Kasparis and Derek Queen are going to work out for me. So there's a range of guys that I could go with here. Like, for example, I do like Thomas Sorber. I do like Jace Richardson. But we'll make things spicy since I got some two secured guys, and I'll take another upside swing. So let's talk about Jaeger Demon really quickly here. So Jaeger, coming into the season, had so much hype. It was such a surprise that he went to BYU in the first place, coming over from Europe, from Real Madrid. And of course, the number one thing that we're all scared of is the shooting. Not great shooting from the floor, pretty terrible shooting from three. But he came back into resurgence with, just with overall hype in the pre-draft process due to his combine measurements, the hand size, how large he is registered as because he came in as a point guard, not as, like a small forward or something along those lines. And it's just, in real life NBA, I would not be shocked at all if he falls down to the 20s because of these shooting concerns. But with that high assist rate that he had in college, his size, and the overall upside in general, in a dynasty draft, you need to swing earlier than that. If you want to land somebody like a Yegor Demon, just try to hit on that upside. So I'm going to take him here 13th overall, which is going to round out my 5 picks for myself. Could be risky, but at least, now having both him and Yakashonis within my little 5-man squad here, I'm pretty confident at least one of those two will work out. So, yes, going to go with the first Russian player in the NBA since Timothy Mozgov. Okay, Noah, for your last one, number 14 overall in a Dynasty rookie draft, who are you taking?
I'm gonna go with another center here, and actually, it's the player that you just mentioned before you took Damon, and I was really nervous that you were gonna take my guy, but I'm gonna go with Thomas Sorber
Oh,
out
I
of
was
Georgetown.
close. I promise you, I was so close.
Dang, I left you Khan, and then you were gonna take Sorber from me. My goodness, that would have really hurt my heart. But I really like him for both real life and for fantasy basketball. I think the numbers are so encouraging in the sense that he can obviously like he can score. Like he's not like a prolific scorer, but he has a little bit of a shooting touch that maybe he can knock down a mid-range shot here and there and eventually maybe expand it out to the three-point line, but not really too concerned about whether or not that happens. But scores at the rim, rebounds the ball well. He's a little bit of an undersized center, but he has a 7'6" wingspan, and he's like a strong built guy, like saying around 260 pounds. Uh, but also the defensive numbers, a really strong steal rate for a big, a high block rate, really effective on the glass. I think he fits well in a category league. He does so many different things well without any true weaknesses. I'm excited to see where he lands because it could be late lottery, it could be early 20s. Um, don't really know exactly, and I think that will be a factor when we get to actually doing our rookie drafts, which will be nice. But him as a talent, him as just a prospect, very excited about him. Everything will translate pretty well. So I think the foot injury maybe is a bit concerning, but nothing that I've seen is like from teams or scouts or anything that would say like, hey, we're a little bit alarmed about him, about this foot injury. So we'll see. Maybe that is something that just kind of goes under the radar. Nobody talks about it. And then come draft night, teams are like, yeah, actually, I want to stay away. And he has some massive slide. I'm not expecting that to happen, but I think it's a possibility. But I think I'm excited to see where he ends up because I think he's going to be an impactful center at the next level.
All right, Mitchell, you're going to close the show for us, sir. 15th overall in a Dynasty rookie draft. Who do you want?
Yeah, so I'm gonna take Cedric Coward here. Um, Not a very familiar name to many yet. Geez, is he all the way down there?
This isn't
In his
very well
40s.
updated, it appears, because like Miles Bird, JT Toppin are still in here. Oh, here he is.
Oh my gosh, at 46. Yeah, this might not be
No, because like I
updated
said, there's
by.
guys
It's
that
not.
withdrew that were still listed in there. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So, a little bit about my selection here. Cedric Howard is one of the recent or hottest risers, really, in most draft boards, and for good reason. He had a great combine. He's very mature in those pre-draft interviews, and the production at Washington State was amazing. He's going to give you pretty decent points. Great rebounds for a shooting guard, small forward, and some out of position assists. But I think from a dynasty or fantasy perspective, what is really interesting kind of goes hand in hand with his 7'2" wingspan is that defensive potential and output. He had an insane steal and block rate, averaging 1.7 blocks and I believe 1.5 steals, something like that. And he also was uber efficient. After all 3 years, or after all 4 years, he's always shot above 50% from the field. He had I think, a cumulative average of around like 40% from three across all 4 years. The main concern is that level of competition. So Cedric Howard was destined to transfer to Duke, but this was before his hot rise in the pre-draft process. Obviously, if Coward is producing these numbers in the ACC against much stronger competition, um, then yeah, he could be a potential top 10 lock. Um, how I see Cedric project as maybe a median outcome is maybe someone like a Herb Jones who doesn't necessarily need the usage to produce, a relevant stat set. Herb Jones is a top 50, 75 producer in 9 category leagues. Yes, he does kind of rely on stats to kind of pump out that value. But if Coward does develop those on-ball skills, who's to say he's not the next J-Dub? Because, if you look hand in hand with their production when they both went to relatively small schools, there's not much of a differentiation. So I'm taking Cedric Harrod here at 15. This is my swing for the fences type pick, especially after many of the top lotto guys are gone. He's likely my favorite at this spot.
All right. So I think one of the main themes of this draft here is you can see how tough six to maybe like 4 through 7 or 4 through 8 is. It's like not the most fun spot to be at. But let's just do a quick review of where each of us ended up with our 5-man squad. So Noah, I'll have you go first. You can kind of just give me your final thoughts on how things rounded out. Doesn't have to be too long or anything. So number 2 overall, Dylan Harper. Number 5 overall, Colin Murray Boyles. Number 8 overall, Kaman Malawach. Number 11 overall, Jeremiah Fears. And number 14 overall, Thomas Sorber. So the old tried and true 9 category method of targeting point guards and bigs. How you feeling about that?
Yeah, I'm pretty ecstatic with the way that this team turned out. It's a lot of those guys. I think Malawat is probably the guy that I'm lowest on in the sense of like the other four I absolutely love, and then Malawach I'm like kind of in the middle about in comparison, I guess how other people view these prospects. But I definitely got my guys in Colin Murray Boyles, Jeremiah Fears, and Tom Sober. So I was really, really happy with the way this turned out, and I'm sure when I get into my actual rookie drafts, nobody will allow me to get my guys. So this is great.
Yeah, that's the downfall of doing the content creation that we do is now guys know who your guys are, and so they want to drive up the price on you. They want to try to snipe you and then get you to buy that guy from them at an upscale price. Yeah, it happens. It's kind of what we have to deal with. But this type of thing that we do, this content space is just way too much fun to stop to make that deter us. So now let's go to you, Mitchell. Your resulting 5-man squad. Number 3, VJ Edgecombe. Number 4, Ace Bailey. Number 9, Trey Johnson. Number 10, Noah Esenge. And number 15, Cedric Coward. How are you feeling about your 5 guys there?
Yeah, so similar to Noah, well, I'm a little bit less high on some of my guys. I'm really high on 3 out of the 5 guys that I selected, VJ Edgecombe, Noah Senge, and Cedric Howard. When I think of Ace Bailey, I had to take him for that tradable dynasty asset value. He just has too much upside, too much excitement across the fantasy basketball community not to pass on. The second one, Trey Johnson, I'm not necessarily the highest on him, but because of how this exercise played out, he just fell in my lap, and I don't anticipate this to happen. We recently ran a couple polls on like who'd be drafted fifth. He was the overwhelmingly favorite here at the 5 spot from a fantasy basketball perspective. And I just had to take him because of the value. And a lot of the times, if you're in an active league, you have to take the best available and also the most valuable asset because you're always going to be trading, you're always trying to get the best outcome regardless, or maybe even you take him and you trade him and you trade down. So um, really high on those other three guys. And yeah, so what about you, Andrew? I know you're the lucky man of the hour, with the number one overall pick with Cooper Flag and falling in your lap. So your job was a little bit easy.
It was a little easy. I kind of just specifically wanted to put the number 3 and 4 challenge on you, but okay. So a review of what I did: number 1, Cooper Flag; number 6 overall, Kasparis Jonas; number 7, Derek Queen; number 12, Con Kneppel; and number 13, Yegor Demon. Obviously, I can't really call Cooper my guy. He's kind of everybody's guy. He's the consensus one overall. So really, kind of only one of the players I drafted is one of my guys, which is Con Kneppel. I did like Jonas and Queen a lot more going into the, or like prior to, I guess, like this last month where we saw the combine and started to really do more deep diving on these guys prior to the NBA draft happening. And, like I mentioned, I could easily regret not going Trey Johnson with one of those two at 6 or 7. However, I think there is a lot more perceived value in a dynasty leagues with either Jonas or Derek Queen. And so I think I would have a bit more trade flexibility there using one of them. Whereas if I took Trey Johnson, it's with the intention of he's going to stay on my team and produce for me. But I think I can get something pretty juicy out of Kasparis or Queen. Con Kneppel was, my safe staple. I don't really need to go too much more into him. And this is kind of the same principle that applies with Yegor Demon. It's like he's not necessarily one of my guys, but I think someone might want him more than I do. And so, each of these guys, like you can take a guy not with the intention of keeping him, but knowing that he has a very high perceived value within the dynasty community. Maybe he's someone will show out at summer league, and you just get to sell high at that point and maybe bring in a different asset that you like more. So not like 100% thrilled with getting my guys, because I didn't really get many of my guys, but I did get a lot of perceived trade value and a lot of flexibility that's going to come from that, because today's exercise is obviously purely dynasty focused. But maybe if you're watching, you can leave a comment down below. Whose 5-man squad did you like the most at the end of this exercise here? So that will do it for us today. That is 15 players on the board from a dynasty perspective. Noah, before we let you go, let us know what kind of content you're working on right now, where we can find you within the Old Man Sports Squad network.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Noah Rubin 22, and if you're on Bluesky, it's the same thing, just with the .bsky.social thing at the end. Daily episodes Monday through Friday of the Young Man Squad Fantasy Basketball podcast coming out. A lot of draft focus right now, so be on the lookout for those. And then there will also be a lot of content coming out for Roto World as well. That'll be draft related. So I'll try and tweet out everything I do. So that's probably the easiest way to find my content, is just to give me a follow.
Yes, follow Noah. He is awesome. He puts out great stuff. You got to follow him if you're not following him already, especially if you are heavily into fantasy basketball or dynasty basketball. But thank you for watching today. Make sure to leave a like. You can check out all of our content, anglefantasybasketball.wordpress.com, and we'll see you guys next time.